And welcome to another edition of the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke, coming to you today with some sad news as legendary driver Danny Ongais has passed away at the age of 79. It was announced earlier today that he passed away from congestive heart failure in Anaheim Hills, California. As somebody who only met him a few times, I consider myself a fan. I think a lot of people were. Interesting fella. Some of the newer viewers may not be aware of his early career, which dates back to the mid 1960s in drag racing, where he won many championships in AHRA, I believe it is, and the NHRA. Was a drag racer, drove gas dragster, and then later funny cars. And probably as somebody as I remember him from his drag racing days, even though I was very young, was the Mickey Thompson Mach 1 Mustang funny car, which was such an iconic dragster back in the day. And that car won, I believe, was a 1969 U.S. Nationals at IRP. And Danny was just a very quiet individual, very spoke softly. And, one wonders if somebody like him could even be successful in auto racing today, in which PR and that is so very important. And, Danny was just soft spoken. He would do interviews. If you look on YouTube, he did television interviews and was quite well spoken, but just definitely didn't pursue the press. And but when he spoke, people listen, as they say. He was born in 1942 in Hawaii, and his IndyCar career started in 1968, believe it or not, with the aforementioned Mickey Thompson, driving that wild Mickey Thompson special stock block powered car in 1968. I believe he tried to make the race in Hanford, and then also tried to attempt a race at Phoenix and to gain experience. He went to Indianapolis, and the USAC officials turned him down to get more experience. He showed up again a few years later at Phoenix, where he wrecked in practice. And Danny decided to go a few years later, decided to go Formula 5000 racing. A Formula 5000 racing was basically a Formula car, a lighter than an Indy car back then. Not necessarily a Formula 1 car, but that was powered by a 5-liter V8 engine. Many drivers drove with success in that series. Drivers like John Cannon, David Hobbs, Sam Posey, and Brian Redmond, and even interlopers like Mario Andretti and Al Unser drove in that series. Well, Danny drove in that series with Ted Field as the owner, and with Interscope Racing with various degrees of success, culminating with running full-time in IndyCar in 1977. Teaming up with Parnelli Jones along with Ted Field, he drove the first version of the Parnelli to some success, and even winning a race at Michigan that year as a rookie. But he won a couple of pole positions, and that's where he gained the reputation of being known as Danny on the gas, or Danny on gas, because he was fast, very fast, quick learner. 1978 was his most successful year in IndyCar racing, where I believe he won 5 times. And to sum up 1978 is pretty easy. You had Tom Sneva, who won the championship but didn't win a race. You had Al Unser Sr., who won the Triple Crown that year, winning at Ontario, Indianapolis, and Pocono, but pretty much did not win any, or did not have much success anywhere else. And then you had Danny Ongais, who pretty much either won or broke or crashed that year. And he was exciting. Of course, 1978, Tony Bettenhausen 200 at Milwaukee. He won the pole, broke the track record, and won the race. He was really on his way, and then he had the CART USAC breakup in 1979. Once again, driving the Parnelli car, just did not achieve that success he had in 78. The Parnelli was getting a little bit dated, and I think he got a couple top 5s, but did not win any races in 79. 1980, he continued with that same car, the newer version of the Parnelli, and made the race at Indianapolis. but I think only got a third place at Watkins Glen. Did not have much success and didn't run the entire season that year, if I recall. 1981 came to Indianapolis with a new chassis, a wild car designed by Roman Slobodansky, and it was called the Interscope, and most people just called it the Batmobile. Wild looking car. Unfortunately, about a third of the way through the race, he hit the wall. Big, huge, ugly crash coming out of turn three. Broke both of his legs. Had very severe injuries, and for a while it was kind of touch and go. He was able to recover from those injuries, come back in 1982 with basically the same car, and won and made the race, but did not really achieve the same success he did earlier. Ran in 1983 for Patrick Racing. This is interesting that 1983 was an interesting year for Patrick Racing. Bobby Unser was actually signed on to drive the Marquette 9, and it's had some testing issues and crashed at Phoenix. He was not comfortable with the car at all. He ended up retiring. They put Johnny Rutherford in the car, who promptly had a couple crashes, and then finally the crash where he injured his legs at Indianapolis that year. And it was just running several drivers through the cars at Patrick that year. Of course, he had Gordon Johncock, but on that second car and third car, they had Chip Ganassi, and Danny Ongais ran a few of the races too that year for Patrick Racing, not with great success. I think he had a top 5 finish in one of those races. 84 though, he got back with Ted Field. They got an 84 March and ran the whole season. Was competitive, not a winning driver. I think got a top 5 or 2 that year, but ran this season with that race. 86 only ran Indianapolis. 87 though, 87 was interesting. I remember getting the paper and looking in there and say, Danny Ongais signed with Penske Racing. I mean, talk about what? And unfortunately, early in the month, he hit the wall, big hit, had a concussion, and had concussion symptoms that kept him out the rest of the month. So they brought back Al Unser Sr., who ended up winning the race in the year-old March that they brought out of storage, famously out of the hotel lobby, and won the race. Now, there's a lot of speculation. Could have Ongais won the race, and that would that been the year that he could have? Sure, he could have won it, but most likely, I'd say no. The car he was in was at 87 March. Was not. They were having awful trouble, and they had a bunch of crashes. In fact, I believe they even put it on the cover of Sports Illustrated with all the crashes they were having in Indy that year, including Ongais's. So they put the 86 March was a better handling car. In fact, Penske, I think, switched over all the cars to 86 Marches. Al went to win the race, but Al was a master when it came to strategizing the race from inside the cockpit and pacing himself. Although he does admit that he screwed up when he was lapped about the third of the way through the beginning of the race, but he was able to get that lap back. And through circumstances with Mario having his issues and Roberto Guerrero having his issues in the pits, Al was able to get his 4th win. Then he disappears. Ongais disappears, and then we had the IRL kart situation in 1996, and Ongais shows up as a bunch of other retreads at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He did not make the race, and then Scott Brighton, who won the track, broke the track record that year and was testing a sister car, got killed. They needed to replace Brighton. They put Ongais in the car. That was quite a surprise. A lot of the railbirds in that, we were really surprised that he did that, but he ended up starting last and ended up finishing 7th. For a guy that hadn't been in an IndyCar in 10 years, it's pretty good. Ongais is pretty talented. And then I believe he tried to race one more IRL race, and then he tried to race with Pelfrey, I think either the year after or 2 years after, in 98 maybe, and wrecked, and then he kind of disappeared. First time I met him was at Milwaukee in 1980. Me and my buddy walked up, and he was sitting by the pit wall, and we got his autograph, including an autograph for his brother. Danny Ongais was his favorite driver. If you've ever seen Danny Ongais' autograph, it was very, let's call it, simplistic. autograph, and he signed I think a photo that we gave him, and then he signed our programs, and we gave it to him, and he was like, "What are you guys trying to pull? That's not his autograph." We're like, "It's his autograph." And I think to this day he doesn't believe us that we got him Danny and Guys' autograph when we were kids. He was a hell of a driver, was a very fast driver. He had his fans, but so soft spoken. Danny, he'll be missed. Don't forget to subscribe and to like this video. Thank you.